where sort of in the other class we continued, but we have to go back to the beginning of page 233 in the Pnei Halacha, the Manim section, in English, chapter 11, section 7, adding a new day phrase, candle. But before we had a question. Russell asked about what we were discussing yesterday, but where to place the Chanukah. We had a class where we discussed 3 options. Who can remember what they were? 3 major options.
One is in front of the window.
Window, classic. That's how I grew up, the lighting in the window in Toronto.
On the opposite side of the mezuzah, on the left side.
In the doorway, right?
Yeah. And the other is outside, always in the left side.
The other one, the third one we actually mentioned is probably you haven't seen that. It's just on the table, inside.
Yeah.
Inside, totally inside for the family members. Nothing to do with the window, no outside, not the door. And then we said there's a version of the door, which is the courtyard door. But it depends if you have such an appropriate courtyard. Okay, so this is what we, just a brief summary. I think we said that they're all kosher at the end of the day. And it's a little bit of personal preference, depending on your family situation, depending on your, location of your window and your doors and personal preference. I like to have the candles inside so that I can see them. Some people just stand by the door for half an hour. I find that it gets cold. But
Toronto.
Yeah, in Toronto for sure. Toronto, I just live in the window. I don't think not too common in Toronto to light outside at all. As much as we're not so afraid of anti-Semitism, still. That's true. Anyways, lighting in the windows is a thing more common. And these aquariums, they cost money too. It's a pretty penny. It doesn't. It's not a large investment like a pair of tefillin, but it is more than just a candle. And so not everybody's willing to invest in the aquariums. They didn't sell them in I don't think in Chutz La'aretz, they don't sell them so commonly like they do here. And there's every supermarket you could buy one of these nowadays. And it's recently, the most recent years. 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. They weren't so common. It was only like the special yeshiva boys who really wanted to light outside, but everybody else would light inside the window. Sort of, we're coming back from the gullus, and we're getting used to being able to be in our home and being able to light outdoors, and spread the light, as we spoke about. So the question came up: what about electric lights? And that was a little bit connected to Russell's question now. And I said electric lights, most poskim say you're not allowed to use because they're not considered to be oil in a wick. It's not, that's the definition of a candle halachically. But more importantly, the question is where it was coming from. A lot of people, was it Tennessee? We had a question from, they see people putting menorahs on their cars. We're talking about Chabad. We're talking about, and they do these public lightings in the center of town or wherever they can, hopefully with permission. And what's the deal with those? Yeah.
No, I want to share an anecdote about my Chabad. We did that in, I think it was the big Dallas Mall. I think it was in it's called the Galleria. And my Chabad was doing the candle lighting. And I was wearing this giant, this was about 5 years ago. I was wearing this giant inflatable dreidel costume. And I remember there were 2 types of kids. There were the kids who would run away from me screaming in the costume. And then there were the kids that tried to hug me.
That's hilarious. Never heard of that.
Yeah.
Listen, you have what to compete over there with the Santa,
Yeah. You have to compete. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to grab the attention there, but they do amazing work of outreach, and there are Jews everywhere, even in Dallas apparently. So halachically, those are hard to justify in terms of a lighting which is obligated. I think we mentioned the Talmud says ner ishu beito. That the mitzvah is defined as a mitzvah that a person fulfills in his home. And there's a long discussion on what do you do if you don't have a home, if someone's homeless or someone's traveling, that's on a boat, he's on the road. You don't have a home. So what is called your home? Maybe you can't light. Maybe you should have your wife light for you at home if you have a wife that's at home. If you do have a home, you're just not in it. So there's lots of discussions. We'll get into that a little bit. But essentially, these types of lightings, which are in a mall or on a car, or unless you're, what did someone say to me the other day? That they're living in the moshav. What moshav? Moshav means communal settlement.
Something like a kibbutz.
Like a kibbutz, a form of kibbutz. And it turned out one thing went to the other. What they meant to say was, as a funny joke, that they're living in ha-moshav ha'achori of their car. Moshav also means a bench, a seat, place to sit. Yeshiva. Moshav comes from the word lashevet. And it meant they were living out of their car. The back seat of their car. So let's say you're living out of the back seat of your car, then maybe then you light the menorah in your car. I can understand that, but that's quite odd. That's not so common. Usually they're putting the menorah in the car, they're putting it in the mall, they're putting it in the town square, just so people will know it's Chanukah, to commemorate, to publicize the miracle. That's the essence of the mitzvah. That's the bracha we make. We'll talk about the bracha in just a minute. The bracha we make, one of them is that about the miracles, that God did miracles for us. And to publicize that miracle, that's the essence of the lighting of the candles. So it's true that it's halachically only valid if it's at your home or someone's home and not in the town square, not in the car. So I wouldn't make a bracha, I think. That's the way I was trained. But I believe that there is grounds for first of all, it's commendable to publicize the miracle, and to, if people, they're Jews in Dallas who maybe don't light in their own home, and they come to the mall and they see a Chanukah menorah, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm Jewish. This is mine, and I'm connected." And maybe they'll even have a sufganiyah and spin Moshe the dreidel, Moshe, and who knows? They'll have a good experience. And the next time, maybe they'll actually go to shul for Yom Kippur, and the next time maybe they'll start to maybe learn a little bit about Judaism and get closer and come back to their roots. So there is a lot to be said for that activity. Halachically, it's hard to justify. The only thing.
Well, like I noticed, I was at the grocery store here the other day, and it was a pack of candles for, less than 2 shekels.
A shekel, 2 shekels.
Yeah,
it's
2
amazing.
shekels for pack candles, and 2 shekels for an aluminum, sheet menorah.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's not an expensive mitzvah.
That's right. You have to be motivated to do it. But they're really the economic consideration. The Talmud actually says it's an amazing thing that you can with 1 shekel or something like that. The Midrash says 1 zuz or whatever it was in the time. Put a candle in your window and your door, and you're bringing the divine presence into your life. And it's an amazing thing. It's really not about money. It's just a question of mindfulness, awareness, and holiness, and connection. So it's a good thing to connect, but you can light candles anywhere, and if you can't light them in an 8 candelabra and you write on it Happy Hanukkah, so then people will get the message, which is a good thing. In terms of saying a bracha, I think it's a little bit problematic. There is something similar, and there's a way to stretch your home in the following way. We'll get to it, hopefully, in the laws of Hanukkah inside in a minute. But since you asked, I'll continue to sort of just go with that. There is a custom. This is a custom not predates Chabad by hundreds of years. Okay, it's an ancient Jewish custom that not only do we light the Chanukah candles at home, as mandated, obligated, but we also light them in the synagogue, in shul. It's a strange thing. Nobody lives in the shul. So what are you doing lighting candles? And the common custom is we say a bracha. The truth is we light them in the morning, Shacharit time, also without a bracha. But in the evening service, before Marav, after Marav, every community's got their little bit of a switch. But it's supposed to be a public lighting of the menorah with a bracha in shul. what's going on here? We just said it's got to be in the home. Nobody lives in the shul, so it's hard to justify. But this is already an ancient custom. This is not something new. This is not the mall, okay? This is the shul. Some people say, well, you know what? There is a connection between the candelabra of the Chanukah and the candelabra in the temple, in the 7 branches of the Menorah, which was lit in the Beit HaMikdash. And our shuls, our synagogues, have a moniker. Anybody know what they're called? It's connected to the Beit HaMikdash. They're called the Mikdash Me'at. A small temple in miniature. And there's this concept that every synagogue, whether you're in Italy or in Seattle, wherever you happen to be, and you make a shul, you make a synagogue, which is dedicated to Jewish worship, it's a little bit like the temple in Jerusalem. The best we can do for now, till we have the actual temple in Jerusalem. But so it's sort of like a continuation of that. And it could be that's the source for lighting this Chanukah in the shul. So it's like a different kind of lighting. Also, we light it in a different place. It says in the shul, you're supposed to light it in the south.
In the south?
In the south of the shul, yeah. It's strange, like the southern part. Why is that? How do you figure? Well, when you go back to the temple, the candelabra was on the southern side, was on the south, right? The lechem apanim, the table with the showbread was on the north, and the menorah was on the south. So that's why I say that maybe that's where the custom started, as sort of like a commemoration of the temple lighting, although of course we don't, it's not the actual temple, of course. We have to be careful. We don't dedicate things, even though we also say after we light the candles, what do we say? Nerot halalu kodesh haim. Kodesh, the word kodesh comes from the word, right? Mikdash, it's the same. So that's actually reserved for temple. Then you're dedicating them to the temple. So it's actually quite a problematic statement to make if you define something as holy, but you say this is holy for the temple. I'm not saying it's just for demonstration purposes. You can't use it. You're not allowed to misappropriate anything from the treasury of the temple. So if you make something kodesh, you really can't use it. And it's not like we're calling our Hanukkah candles actual temple worship. So you got to be careful. Although the hints are there. The hints are there. And of course, that's why we're not allowed to use them. We say, that's why we have the shamash. We mentioned the other day, you have that extra candle because you don't want to end up using the lights of the candle, because if it's like the Beit HaMikdash, you're not allowed to benefit from the temple property for your personal use. And so there is elements there of the temple lighting in our commemorative Hanukkah lighting. And that's used now. So you're going to be lighting in the shul. That's the custom. We can argue with that as much as you want, but the law says we're supposed to light Chanukah candles in shul with a bracha. So now along comes some of the modern day poskim and say, what happens if you have, like, I think I'm going to a wedding. After I'm with you on Tuesday night, Wednesday night I'm going to Haifa. This is 2 hours south of Jerusalem, and then Haifa is 2 hours north of Jerusalem. I'll be doing a lot of traveling on Hanukkah.
4 hours.
I really should put a Chanukah on my car because I'm doing all the mileage, but I'm not really a Chabadnik. I would like to get one.
I have driven 90 minutes before there, and the 90 minutes back just to have lunch with someone. So like,
yeah, it's not. I know. In Israeli terms, it's a lot, but you're right. It's not so impressive. In any case, what do you do when you're? So I'm going to a wedding. A former student of ours here, Machon Meir, actually. Yeah, amazing. Did Gior, and I was getting married. Beautiful. So excited. I've done this before. I've officiated weddings on Hanukkah. And what about the candle lighting? Do you light the candles in the wedding hall?
Are you the official for the wedding?
Not this time.
Okay.
I was in previous Hanukkahs. This one, he connected to a rabbi there, I'm sure. Maybe it's her rabbi, I don't know, but I'm just a guess. There is the common custom at public gatherings of all sorts. A concert, a play, a lecture, conference. Anytime you have a big gathering, someone's going to suggest, hey, it's Hanukkah. Let's light the Hanukkah candles, which is a good idea because it connects people to, out of all the mitzvahs in the Torah, I think Hanukkah is the most popular. Even the most secular Jews, they don't really mind lighting candles. Many, I'd say even upwards of 80% of Jews, of the surveys they've done, they say, sure, I light Hanukkah candles. And this is part of it, that whenever there's a gathering of any sort, we light the candles. How can we do that? It's not anybody's home. So the poskim suggested the following trick. Is if you're going to have 10 men at this gathering, why don't you make a minyan and daven mariv before the play, after the play, before the concert, in the middle of the concert, daven mariv there. And once you're having a group of 10 Jews that are davening together, we can give it the status of a shul. Once it's a shul, we have a well-established custom to light the candles with a bracha in the shul. And that's why perhaps that's ideal. So if Chabad has 10 Jews in the mall or wherever they happen to be making a public lighting in the town square, if they really want to, justify making a bracha properly, they should have a minyan there, and then you could call, the mall will turn it into a synagogue temporarily, and you'll be able to light the candles with a blessing. But other than that, it's hard to justify if it's not a shul and if you don't even have a minyan. It's a good thing to light the candles. Light them without a bracha. I just had a question the other day. I'll just share with you. I think I might have mentioned to you in other contexts. My daughter's celiac. She can't have gluten, so she can't have bread. So if you can't have bread, you can't make birkat hamazon. So yeah, not even on Shabbat, she's not allowed to have bread. So she never says birkat hamazon. So recently I got a question from acquaintance, knows me as a rabbi. I taught her a little bit in Sweden, believe it or not. Now she's converted and she's living in Israel. Great girl. Yeah.
I've a little tangential question. Does she eat injera? Do you know what that is? It's like the African
Yeah,
bread.
I believe she can. I don't think it has gluten in it.
Yeah, does she?
Injera, I don't know.
Because I have a celiac friend, he just goes to some Ethiopian store around here.
Sure, yeah, it's teff. It's teff. It's
But
made
then
from
do
teff,
you
which
even
is
make
a type of-
birkat hamazon?
No, so you don't make birkat hamazon. So it doesn't solve the problem. Her problem was she was recently diagnosed as celiac, and the question became, can I? I want to say birkat hamazon. She misses it. She loves the blessing, beautiful blessing, thanking God for the land, thanking God for our sustenance, praying for mercy on Jerusalem, and for your own. We ask for our livelihood. It's a beautiful blessing. So I did some research. I mean, the answer in short is no. You can't. But I saw the following suggestion. This is fascinating. This was suggested by the son of the Rambam, Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, who was a rabbi like his father, and the community of Yemen took a great liking to Rabbi Moses ben Maimon. He became the leader of Yemenite Jewry, even though he never stepped foot in Yemen. But they wrote to him, they were having some troubles in the community, all sorts of interesting stuff, a false messiah, good stuff. Anyways, the Rambam took them on as a project. He became their mentor, their guide, their rabbi, their chief rabbi of Yemen was Rambam. And to this day, the Yemenites follow the halacha of the Rambam more than any other posek. It's fascinating. In any case, the Rabbi Avraham, the son of the Rambam, wrote to them. They had a problem in Yemen. They couldn't get wheat. They couldn't get wheat flour. They couldn't make proper bread. And they, it's similar to the celiac. It's funny. They not that they weren't allowed. They just couldn't get it. And what were they worried about? Birkat hamazon. Why did they want it? What were they worried about?
That they couldn't say it.
That their children wouldn't know what it is. That they would grow up without ever saying Birkat hamazon. And the kids would be missing this. It's one of the mitzvah of the Torah. One of the 650. It's the only bracha really which is biblically mandated. It says in the Torah, you should eat and be satisfied and bless God. So what are they going to do? The Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam suggested, for educational purposes, what you should do is recite the Birkat hamazon without saying the name of God. Baruch atah melech haolam. Right, you skip out Hashem Elokeinu. Hazan et haolam kulo. Baruch atah hazan et hakol. You just don't say God's name. And that way, you'll still, you can even sing it with your kids, and you can know the benching, but you can't, as long as you're not saying the name of God, you're not actually you're not actually saying the blessing. The essence of the blessing is when you invoke God's name. And so this is a solution also for Chabadnikim. If they are conscious of this, I think their custom, I don't know, it depends on the shaliach, but if you are in a situation where you're asked to say a blessing and you can't because halachically it's not a valid lighting of the menorah, it's not in the home, you missed the beginning, but really you're only supposed to say bracha in a home or in a synagogue, as the custom is. So just you could say the blessings maybe without God's name, and people can sing together. Right? Everybody joins in, they know the tune. I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. Let them sing the tune, it's fine. Just saying God's name is the problematic part. So if you could, most people won't even notice. You've heard, sometimes they do it on TV shows or movies if they want to say a bracha, but it's on a set.
They say
it's fake.
Elokeinu.
Sometimes they say Elokeinu, sometimes they say Baruch atah Amonai instead of Adonai. It's very hard to notice, only if you really have keen ears and you're really, some people think you're just mumbling or just slurring your words. But if you don't say God's name, then you're safe. So you could maybe slip it by the community and not actually say God's name. And but some people would say the opposite. This is the bracha for the people. Because what happens, I mentioned to you before, there is a law for someone who doesn't have a home. If you're homeless, you're living in a cardboard box, okay? Chas v'chalila. Or as I said, you're traveling and you don't have a home to go back to. You're living out of your suitcase, as you said, or you're living out of your car, okay? So you don't really have a home that's worthy of putting a menorah there. The Talmud already says you still say 2 out of the 3 brachot on the first night and 1 out of the 2 brachot on the other nights. Because you don't make the bracha to light the Chanukah candles, because you can't. You're not lighting the Chanukah candles. But when you see someone else's Chanukah candles, not in the mall, someone's Chanukah candles in their windowsill or in their doorway, someone who's actually fulfilling the obligation of putting the Chanukah candles, if you see the Chanukah candles, you can make a bracha. One of the Shas HaNisim, that God did miracles for us, because you're reminded of the miracles. And so we see that there's maybe a second form of the mitzvah of the Chanukah candles. The primary form is what we all know. We light them ourselves, and we see the ones we light, and we make the blessing on those. But let's say you can't light them. You don't have a candle to light. You don't even have a shekel to your name. Could happen. So you walk down the street, and you're really feeling sad, but then you look up and you see in someone's window, Chanukah candles, isn't that sweet? Warms your heart. And you remember, wow, I am Jewish. You're allowed to you must say a bracha. The first night, 2 brachas, because there's a shechian on the first night, if you missed that. And the other nights, there's just 2. But out of the 2, you can't say the one, the hadlik neir, because you're not lighting a candle. But you do say, and so, if you're lighting in a public place, maybe there's some kind of precedent for that idea of saying the brachot anyways, even though, as I said, really you should be saying them on a kosher lighting on someone's home. You see them in the mall, nobody's home. It's hard to justify actually saying a blessing, unless you're making a synagogue service out of it, as I said. But it's a good thing to do, and we'll have to work on the issue of not saying God's name in vain in the blessing. But it's a very wonderful thing that they publicize the miracle on their cars and wherever possible. So that was answering Russell's question. Yes.
So this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it has something to do with that. So, out of all the Jewish holidays, why is it that Hanukkah has sort of become the most famous one in the secular eye, or like in the eyes of the goy?
What do you think? It's a good question. What do you think?
From what I picked up, I think it's part of the whole. Some Jews getting a little salty over Christmas being so publicized, so they asked. They said, well, you have to start putting a menorah in the. If you're gonna put a Christmas tree in town hall, you have to put a menorah in there as well. I'm thinking it's that, but But here's the thing: it's not a d'oraita holiday; it's a d'Rabbanan holiday. So it's not like if out of all the holidays you could only celebrate one, it wouldn't be Hanukkah.
If I can, just I want to hear other answers. It's a good answer. I think comparing to Christmas might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
But I want to just bring in the last thing you said, that it's a rabbinic holiday. And I think maybe that's, as we said yesterday, we're really celebrating rabbinic Judaism, the Oral Torah. And it's amazing. We didn't go at length to try to describe the difference in the written Torah and the Oral Torah. But one of the features, I think, of the Oral Torah is that it's easier to access. It's
what, sorry?
Easier to access.
Access. Sorry.
And to connect to. And perhaps that's like what you're saying. On the one hand, it's the Rabbanan, so it's like on a lower level of obligation. On the other hand, wow, rabbinic mitzvot, there's a unique power to them, that they draw us in, that we connect to them. There's, the rabbis who devised them. And it's sort of like, if the biblical mitzvahs are top down, God told us do these X, Y, Z. This one is bottom up. This is like the rabbi saying, "Wow, this is the way to get the people to worship God. This is the way we should connect." And maybe because of that, it's even more powerful because it is rabbinic. But that's a good question. Why did anybody else ideas why people connect to Hanukkah so easily?
It's just the same time as Christmas.
Right, that's similar to what Moshe said. Yeah, good. What else?
Because it became commercialized, at least in America.
In America, if you have good marketing, that's it.
America does, the rest of the world follows.
Okay, what else? Yeah.
I mean, someone whose family lit the menorah every year and did literally nothing else.
Yeah. Give us your insight, please.
More or less, it's just one of those very simple, low effort
It's easy.
thing to do.
About it being cheap.
And you get presents.
It's also, it's
And-
a few shekels.
And also, I think the symbolism of the menorah, it's on the coat of arms. It's on I think it's on the coat
Right.
of arms.
State of Israel.
State of Israel.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of one of those besides the Star of David, it's the Jewish symbol for whatever reason. So
Basic Jewish identity.
it's just something simple that's easy to do, and I think the basic story of Hanukkah of Jews, the miracle of it is a simple enough story to tell versus something I don't know, Yom Kippur, which is atoning for your sins, where it's if nobody thinks and lives like that, it's what do I need to atone for? I'm perfect.
Well said. I like it. What's the simple messages of Hanukkah, right? Light over darkness. It's pretty simple. Enemies.
Killed the bad guys.
The bad guys, they tried to kill us, or persecute us. We fought back. Yeah, the candles. What did we say yesterday? The victory of the spirit over the they were greater than us in number. It's the underdog. We're going to say in the Al-Anisim, where they were great in number, and we were a small band of rebels. Everybody loves the underdog. Good. Yeah. What other ideas? Anybody else wanted to? Why people love Hanukkah so much and connect to it? I'll give you a Sufgani.
But I would actually argue that Hanukkah isn't the most known. I'd argue Pesach is.
Okay.
Really? No.
Interesting. They're head to head. I think they're both important.
Just put
But,
out
Well, I think
comment like
Pesach
that.
is also
Tell why.
known
Tell
for
why.
I've
similar
got
reasons.
friends who are not even Jewish, but they've got one parent who's Jewish, and because of that, they celebrate Pesach. They don't celebrate Hanukkah,
Not
Rosh
Hanukkah.
Hashanah, Sukkot. No.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I guess you could also.
It's a thing
never
for
met
surveys,
anyone
but
like
they're
that.
both up there.
You
and
could say
they're different.
Pesach is famous for one of the
Could
same
be.
reasons that Hanukkah is famous,
You're
because
from the land of
Pesach
Korah, from the
is
land of the boat.
Yeah.
compared to
I
Easter.
agree.
There's an equivalent in the Christian culture.
not as much.
Well, no. There's some historians I think that say, and Rav Singer talks about this a lot, that people
You
say
like
that
that
the Last Supper was a Pesach Seder.
Right.
So
Right.
there's again also in a way Pesach sort of exists in the more mainstream American mindset.
Really?
Interesting.
Yeah, they look cool.
Mainstream
But I think
mindset
Pesach's not as
scary.
I think it could also be that
Hanukkah's not
Hanukkah is
jam.
a very visual holiday. Like with Rosh Hashanah, there's not much that's very visible to it to secular people.
Right. You have to
Pesach-
hear the shofar.
Pesach is just they see
Doesn't look
matzah
like
in
much.
Pesach they see matzah in the grocery stores
see.
and that's about it. But with I think also with Hanukkah is you drive around and you see in front of the shuls, you see the menorah.
This is
Even if it's just in front of the single Chabad house, hey, something's up, something's going down.
Right. Good. I want to say one other thing that you guys probably never heard of, but you're now in Israel. And in Israeli context, there's another reason why Hanukkah is the most popular.
because it's Jewish Christmas.
No.
No.
In Israel, nobody knows it's Christmas. It's unbelievable. The average
I
Israeli,
was here-
they ask them, what's December 25th? They'll say,
I
the
was
day
here
after
2 years ago.
24th.
I
You
was
have
here-
no idea
I was here 2 years ago.
what Christmas is.
Only-
It's beautiful. I love it. I think it's great.
Christmas
We just
is
grew up in
so
Christian countries, and we're influenced by it. But there's no reason that an Israeli has to know when Christmas is. Now it's a little more because a lot of Russian Jews have come and they brought their culture. The Russian culture has that's it. They have the Novi God, the New Year celebration, which is
I got Christmas.
essentially it's a civil holiday, but it's connected to the New Year, and the New Year is connected to why do they start the year?
Also,
In January,
just-
because
just down the
his
street
birth.
over there by the light rail station, they put up little Chanukah decorations on the light poles.
Have you seen the?
Nice.
They make a big deal out of it here.
Nice.
Have you
nice.
seen the on the bridge?
Mm-hmm.
They
They've
light
got-
up Menorah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hanukkah's
Amazing.
actually the first
I mean, not
holiday
last
that's
night.
celebrated
Last
here in
night was
Israel.
Thanksgiving.
Because Hanukkah
Cool.
goes on
What were you
both
saying?
fronts.
I think
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was.
but I was saying that
Everyone's
in
happy
Israel,
with Christmas.
in Israel, there's a unique feature, and that is that the early Zionist pioneers, who were largely secular, came to Israel and wanted to found the state. They said enough of the they had enough of the exile, and they had enough of being downtrodden and the anti-Semitism.
Massacred.
That's it. And they fought to get political recognition and to settle the land with both in agriculture and defending themselves against the marauding Arabs who tried to push them out. So they took that mostly, as I said, they were secularists. Mostly they were presenting themselves, identifying as the new Jew. The new Jew doesn't need all of those exile mitzvot, that Torah mitzvot, that's so old hat. We're going to be the new
and
Jew.
Hanukkah is the land of Israel.
That's it. The new
Holiday,
Jew,
yeah.
the mighty Jew who works the land
They
and
didn't
defends
find-
himself. Where did they find a hook in their Judaism to connect to that? Hanukkah, the Maccabees.
That's kind of along the lines of the question I was asking yesterday
Mm.
about how Purim was not in Israel, Hanukkah is in Israel.
Right. The Hanukkah story is about
That's exactly
the Jewish rebellion and the mighty Jews who beat down the armies which were greater than them.
Himself in a modern version of Osmanian.
Exactly. So they envisioned themselves, and they taught all their children to be like the Maccabees. It didn't so much focus on what we said yesterday. This is a festival, the Oral Torah of the foundation of the rabbinic
Yeah,
Judaism, and the
military
words of the
might.
sages, and even not about that the oil represents the light of the content of spirituality. They took the other side, the military victory, the power, Jewish pride. and rebellion. At the same time, it's a little bit odd, but somehow they got it to work together. They decided to celebrate their might, their power, including the right when throughout Jewish history are the Jews, physical mighty heroes. Maybe
Not very often.
there's some biblical stories of Yahshua, conquering the land, but really it's the story of the Maccabees, and so they wanted to celebrate physical might. It's a little bit of a quirky phenomenon. But you know what became popular on Hanukkah time? What the Zionists decided to develop? They said, we're going to put on plays and have sports tournaments, and a little bit like the Hellenist Greeks, ironically, right? The culture of plays comes from Greek culture. And the sports teams that are called Maccabi, it's because there's physical might. But sports, that's what the Greek culture introduced, and not the rabbinic Jewish culture. So it's a little bit of a quirky thing, but it exists. This is part of Israel, and that in Israel might be why people connected to Hanukkah more, because even the secular Jews, they were inculcated through. I mean, now. The divide is not so great, and even in secular kindergartens they teach about Hanukkah and the miracle of the oil, and everybody teaches about everything. But there is this not the same anti that you might feel regarding putting on tefillin or keeping Shabbat. They're going to feel, oh, you're encroaching on my freedom. Hanukkah, they feel it's their holiday, and they connect to it. And at this stage, whoever connects to anything Jewish, we'll take what we can get, right? That's my approach anyways. It's not the way I celebrate Hanukkah. That's not exactly the meaning that I try to, think about when I light my candles. I'm not against the military power. That's part of the holiday. We spoke about it yesterday. The Baal said one of the 8 days we're celebrating the military victory. That's that we read the Al-Anisim. We speak about that. There was the many in the hands of the few, and God gave us power to overthrow our enemies. For sure, that's part of the holiday, but I wouldn't say that's the essence. Just to celebrate Jewish might. What? There's a song.
I think it's pretty.
There's a song, a Zionist song. A Zionist song. You might have heard of it. It's around. Maybe I'll teach it to you on Hanukkah. It goes, Mi yimalel k'vurot Yisrael otami yimene hem bechador yakum hagibor goel ha.
What's it called, sorry?
What's the title?
Mi Yimalel. You could find a link to it and send it to us. That'd be great. You're on our WhatsApp group?
Yeah.
Shema Bayamim Ahem B'zman Hazeh
Space.
Maccabi Moshiach Ufodeh. So the Hebrew says as follows: who can speak about the Gvurot, the might of Israel? Who can speak about the might of Israel? Here, Shema. In those days, just in those days, in our days, Maccabi, the fighter, is the one who is Moshiach, who is saving, and Ufodeh, and redeeming us. So the song, this is a song about, so I've heard some more religious singers change the words. And instead of saying Maccabi Moshiach Ufodeh, or what am I going to speak about? Mi Yimalel Gvurot Hakel. Not Gvurot Yisrael, but Gvurot Hakel. I'm speaking about the might of God. And so they switch it around. It's a battle. Some people would even call it a culture war that's going on now here within Israel. Hopefully it won't turn into a civil war, chas v'chalila. But it's a battle of culture between the culture of the religious Jews that want to thank God and to recognize God as the mover and the shaker of Jewish history, with our help, of course, with our participation, with our partnering with God. That's necessary, and that's a big thing to celebrate, but you can't leave God out of the picture. And some secularists, it's becoming a smaller and smaller minority of adamant, anti-religious sentiment, where they say, no, we're gonna celebrate Jewish might without mentioning God whatsoever. In the fight, in the creation of the state of Israel, these these different portions of the Jewish people, they were at the height of their combat, right? The Zionist movement essentially was secular, but there was a group of religious Jews who joined. Religious Zionists, you might have heard of the term. Right? Yeah. So when the founding Declaration of Independence, what's it called? The Declaration of Megillat HaAtzmaut.
Oh.
The Declaration of Independence.
Independence.
Does it say God? Thank God. Like in America, it says on the penny,
In God we
In
trust.
"In God we trust."
It says that on every single denomination currency we
Only
have.
since the early 20th century, I have a $1 bill in my room that does not say "In God We Trust."
Is that right?
So
Okay. Wow.
only
Amazing.
recent, it was only
He
very
showed you.
recent.
Very easy.
I
Okay.
showed you.
Thank you. That's
Well,
fascinating. That's fascinating. In
No,
any
it's
case,
not. No, it's not.
they had a big fight about
when they
it
started putting on.
because of course, the religious Zionists said, "We're creating a state of Israel where you're not going to say thank God. You're not going to say with the help of God." And the other one said, "I don't believe in God." Some of them said, "I don't. We're doing this. This is our move. This is our move. Our might that we've been fighting for it for 100 years, and pioneers, and we're draining the swamps we're giving our lives. We are not saying Shema Yisrael. I'm sorry, we don't want to put it in." So they found a solution.
Oh, Baruch.
What's the compromise? So first of all, you should know there was a Rabbi Maimon who was a big Zionist, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He actually is the founder of Mosad Rav Kook. There's a publishing house based on. It was a student of Rav Kook. Rav Maimon was a big Talmud Chacham himself. He was the first minister of religion, I believe. And he signed on the Declaration of Independence, and next to his name, he wrote Bezrat Hashem, just to sneak it in there. But no, there's more. But there's more. You can see a photo of that. But there's more. What they reached the following compromise. They used the following term. They said, "Be'ezrat Tzur Yisrael." Tzur Yisrael. What does that mean?
God. In our context, we
in
learned
some
about
context, where does Tzur mean God?
it in the Tefillah.
So
David.
What do we sing after we light the Hanukkah candles? Ma'oz Tzur Yeshuati. Tzur means bedrock, rock. God is my rock.
Rock of David. God of David. I'm not talking about Mount Tzur.
Tzur David.
Okay.
The phrase is Tzur Yisrael. In we say in our prayers, right before the Amidah. Tzur Yisrael, right? We call God Tzur. But Tzur means rock. It's not explicitly the name of God. And so this was the compromise they reached, that they're going to mention the rock of Israel, not the God of Israel.
You're gonna have to point it out to me.
Okay. You have the signing here.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's not getting bigger.
I don't know.
You have to get another copy. There's
Just need
many.
an iPhone, man.
But
Find
it
another
does feel
copy.
different around Christmas time
That's true.
in England.
Yeah.
I don't know about America.
Yeah, it does.
In Canada feels exactly the same.
What does?
Christmas time.
Just the time.
I mean, there might be snow, but like
It's everywhere. You walk in the malls and there's Christmas
Yeah,
trees
actually,
everywhere.
I will tell you,
And in
carols
school,
on
in
the
school,
radio.
I will tell you something
Teachers
that's gonna
that
piss
would
off
scream
Hirsch.
at you were wearing
He's right there.
I
wearing
know,
Santa
that's why.
hats or something.
I can't see it. I need a bigger picture.
And then Boxing Day is the best because
So-
you just have football the entire day.
Yeah.
So again,
Everyone plays.
Nice.
I'm happy to be here in Israel, all of that. But one of the few things I miss about Canada
Yeah.
is
Igloos.
beyond the igloos and the polar bears. Is Canada is not like America.
The beer,
where
the
they-
Molson.
That's okay.
Timmy's, he's missed.
But,
He's missed
like-
Canadian
Why
Tire.
don't you just
He's
let
missed
him say what he
Loblaws
misses?
and no name brand.
Why are you stop interrupting him and just let him say what he misses?
Go for
I
it.
will admit,
Ice hockey.
I used there was like literally a war on Christmas, and people would always say Happy Holidays, and I loved to tell them Merry Christmas and just see the kind of shock on their face because you're not allowed to say that.
Why is there a
Okay.
fight against Christmas?
It's just the way
Because
that it.
there's a bunch of PC liberal.
And in Canada, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
very
but
Christian, so
Russians
people
don't-
will
Russians
say
don't
Happy
even-
Holidays, and I'll be like Merry Christmas, and you'll see they just have like a little jolt like that about
Oh,
themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I used to do in America?
So the
I went
truth
to
is,
I went to a semi-Haredi
And I
high
know it's
school,
very bad. I
and
don't do it
they
anymore.
don't like Thanksgiving. So on
Went to a
Thanksgiving,
semi-
we'd have school, and I'd go around saying Chag Sameach.
I've been saying Chag Sameach this morning.
it's
I like
tonight,
that too.
isn't it
Oh,
tonight?
is it?
Well,
No, it's
officially it's
today.
right now,
No,
but-
yesterday was our Thanksgiving. Today is Yom
Well,
Thanksgiving.
actually,
But they have people have their dinners on Thursday night.
They have a
Right,
Thursday
it's-
night, yeah.
it's Thanksgiving Day in New York City. Right?
Got it.
It's
Okay.
only 3 a.m., but it's
Let's celebrate the massacre.
Interesting,
of
fascinating.
the-
Hanukkah throughout the ages takes on new meanings and or different emphases. They're all part of the package of our tradition. It's not like we didn't celebrate the war, but it became so much more significant for the secular Zionists, and that was their way of connecting to the Torah. So I'm not going to, a lot of Jews who would know nothing about Judaism. What do they know? At least they have one holiday that they know, but we're shooting for more. We're aiming to expand that.
Is there an
Okay, so-
Israeli
One
equivalent?
second,
of
one second. Go ahead.
So when we were saying with the homeless person, and if he sees the
You should make a bracha.
he
Yeah.
should make a bracha. What if it's, let's say, the third day, and he hadn't seen any until that day?
On the first day that you see it. Yeah, it's fascinating. What did you say?
I was just curious if there was an Israeli equivalent to Thanksgiving.
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. There is only the equivalent
in the
to
spirit.
the sales. That's becoming
not Jewish.
Black Friday.
Well, no,
Yom
did you
Kippur.
see there was a new
Yeah.
study that showed Black Friday, most of the stuff is either the
quality.
same price or cheaper in the 6 months before Black Friday. 90% of the stuff or something.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I was aware of that.
anyways, no, I don't know of any Israeli type of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Some people
Okay.
say, what would be the Jewish Thanksgiving?
Every day we should be thankful.
Good, every day.
But
Shabbat, we give thanks. What else?
Mm,
Which any day do we really? If you had to choose a day, which would be the Jewish
I would say Yom
Thanksgiving?
Kippur.
no.
No,
Yom Kippur?
No,
Giving thanks.
it's Sukkot, clearly.
no.
Sukkot. Okay, I got lots of opinions here. You're gonna have to give me some
I'll explain why it's Sukkot.
reasons why.
Because Sukkot is the harvest festival.
Good.
And you're thanking Hashem, and you're bringing up your produce to Israel. You're thanking Hashem for all
To
of the
Jerusalem, you mean? I think.
Jerusalem, I meant. That's correct. And you're thanking Hashem for all of the blessing He gave you with your produce. And Thanksgiving is not like, it's not a produce holiday in specific, but
Yeah.
a lot of the decorations are produce themed.
Sure.
In that
But
case,
it's also it's like
in that case, it
thanking
should.
God.
It's a
In
good
that case,
idea.
it should be Hanukkah because that's the only holiday we have where it's a celebration of killing a bunch of people.
Thanksgiving did not
yeah.
celebrate massacring people. It was before the massacre.
To be fair.
Anybody
most of
else
them
have an
killed by
idea about the Jewish holidays? I have a different idea.
Okay, Rob, what's your idea?
I'd love to share it with you. Another guess? Yeah. Yes. Why do you say Shavuot? Why is it Thanksgiving?
That was my second guess. Shavuot, but I like.
Because some of the products are harvest themed.
You want that?
So Hirsch.
Thanksgiving.
So the idea is what starts on Shavuot? What do we start to do on Shavuot the entire summer in the time when there was a temple? It's one of the names of Shavuot. Anybody know what the names of Shavuot are?
Yes. No.
I know we're not on top. We're not on the season right now, but for
There
that,
are four.
it's a long time ago. Excellent. Chag HaBikurim. What is Bikurim?
That's you take your fruits up to Jerusalem again.
Which fruits?
Your first fruits.
First fruits. It's the
The first ones
fruits.
after the fourth
You
year
come
of
and
the
you say
trees.
thank you, right? We know the text. Everybody knows the text. We recite how God, you brought me to the land of Israel, took me out of Egypt. We know the text because we recited on
We learned
Pesach,
it not that
and
long ago too.
Leila Seder. That's good. And so if you ask me, which is a holiday of Thanksgiving, I would say it starts with the Chag HaBikurim. That's the essential theme of the first fruit, bringing the first fruits to God, is to thank Him for your produce. But listen, as Yaakov said, we should say the Modim. We do say the Modim every day, 3 times a day. It's an essential part of it. That's the way we finish our Shemona Esrei every day. So it's a big part of Hakarat HaTov, recognizing the good.
5 times a day.
Go for it. There's a custom people, I don't know if you've met people like that. Baruch Hashem, I have.
Who pray
Have you,
five
Baruch
times a day?
Hashem?
Who what?
How are you feeling? Baruch Hashem.
Oh yeah, I know people like that.
They say Baruch Hashem a lot.
That's what I started saying, because
Throughout
that's
the
what
day.
everyone here says.
Yeah,
Everyone says,
you say
Manishma,
No, but
you
even
have to say
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem.
Even
You're
the-
thanking God many times a day, all the time.
Even the
everything.
Hilonim in the streets, even the ones where you watch them eat non-kosher, you ask them how they're doing, they say Baruch Hashem.
They'll say
Or you
Baruch
could say
Hashem.
Beseder Baruch Hashem.
Right.
But
So someone
it's
answers me Baruch Hashem when I say, "How are you?" They say Baruch Hashem. I say, "Okay, Baruch Hashem good or Baruch Hashem bad?" Or it doesn't answer the question.
Like,
Baruch Hashem.
are you doing Baruch Hashem? What about the family? Baruch Hashem.
Exactly.
How
It's-
is going with the
They're-
Baruch Hashem?
Baruch Hashem.
It's they're not doing well,
It's a cop
but they
out.
don't want to admit that they're not doing well. So they just
It's
say
a
Baruch
cop
Hashem.
out. It's
Sometimes.
When you say that
easier
you're
than
fine,
You
but
don't want to
you're not
engage.
Yeah.
You don't want to engage, and
When you say that you're
sometimes
fine,
you
but you're
respect
not
that.
really-
Sometimes all it needs, the person needs
Just
to
want to terminate.
know that you're asking sincerely, because many times you just ask because it's like instead of saying hello, you say how are you.
Yeah, I think
You
the
don't
most
really wanna know the
sentimental
answer.
version of
That,
it.
that is
That's
90.
the
I
problem.
think that's 98% of it.
No, they're like inshallah, which means like
Inshallah.
God,
It's,
God will.
Hashem.
So it's like, are
Yeah.
you coming? And they're like,
Be'ezrat Hashem is the equivalent of Hebrew,
Not
right?
so good.
yeah.
Right.
Feeling not so good.
Okay. All right, back to Hanukkah. Let's turn to page 233. Everybody have a book? We've got a few other copies here. If you don't have one,
Take it, take it. Oh, there are loads.
Oh,
there are enough.
Thank you.
Hirsch, do you need a book? Never mind, you got a book.
Okay, nice.
Oh, Rav, there is a chapter on Yom HaAtzmaut.
I know. That's why I love this book.
Which page?
Page 233. Who could read for us?
It's the Hebrew one that does it.
I am feeling better today.
Ah.
Therefore, I am volunteering.
Moshe, we're happy to hear you without your nasal distress. Whatever it is.
Yes.
Great.
More than that, but yes. 7. Anything you can only say for Hanukkah?
Exactly. Section 7, chapter 11, section 7 in Pnei Halacha on Hanukkah.
Everything in the world is fleeting, ultimately perishable. Okay, we just start. This is true of ideas and
Ouch.
memories as well. They lose their strength and vitality over time. However, when it comes to lighting the Hanukkah candles, we discover that faith in God never wanes. On the contrary, it continues to exist and even thrive despite the hardships and surrounding darkness. The pure spirituality expressed in the Torah is eternal. Therefore, it constantly increases. Other, more transient ideas, however, fade away and expire. Affectionately embracing this wondrous idea, the entire Jewish people fulfill the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles in the most exemplary manner possible. Mahadrin min ha-mehadrin. Lighting a candle each night until the final light when 8 candles are lit.
Okay, stop there for a second. What he's referring to is a section in the Talmud which says that the essence of the Chanukah Mitzvah, ner, a candle,
Mm-hmm.
ish, ubeito,
One
For a
house
man?
for his household.
and his household. In other words, on Hanukkah, the first night of Hanukkah, the second night of Hanukkah, the third night of Hanukkah, it's all the same. Basically, every household has to light a candle. Pretty simple. Light a candle. But then the Talmud says, Vehamehadrin. Mehadrin means
Better. It's
better. Those who beautify, when it comes from the word hadar, is beautiful, or those who are really meticulous.
One candle
Ner
each night.
lechol echad ve'echad. Where they light a candle for each member of the household. So if there's 10 people in the household, they light 10 candles. If there's 5 people in the household, they light 5
And
candles.
10 different Chanukias.
Well, there's no Chanukias. There's just one candle for each person.
You don't need a ton.
So if you have on the 8th night of Hanukkah 10 people in the house, how many candles do you light? 10. Doesn't matter which night it is.
Not 80.
It's just 10. Or if you have 5 people in the house, you light 5. Even on day 4, if you have 5 people in the house, you light 5 candles. That's the level of Mehadrin. And then the Talmud says there's a third level. Good. That's the phrase we have here. Mehadrin mina madrin. Those who are meticulous, and even more meticulous, or more want to beautify the mitzvah in the most way, doubly beautiful. What they do is that they light an incremental number of candles for each night. First night 1, second night 2, third night 3. And that's the Beit Hillel. You learned about it yesterday, I think. Beit Shammai, they go from 8 down to 1. So there's a change, either decrement or increment. But that's the third, the highest level. Madrid, mina Madrid. Yeah.
So does it count as the mitzvah if you do it according to Beit Shammai? If you do A the first night, you're still
but,
fulfilling the mitzvah.
well, it's a problem to follow Beit Shammai. We're not allowed. We're not allowed
Except for
to.
what, 3 places, right?
Right. The Talmud says that this really became ironclad rule that we follow Beit Hillel, and you're not allowed to choose. Oh, I feel like doing Beit
But
Shammai.
if he's one of the great.
I've heard of
poskim-
someone who likes 2 menorahs because he likes the idea of the increment. That's the mitzvah. But he also likes the idea of Beit Shammai. So he likes one going up and one going down. That's
you should
weird.
also just light a standalone candle too.
Yeah, I think you should put on a strobe light. You know what? There's all sorts of things you can do, but no, the basic mitzvah is we do follow Beit Hillel. We go up 1 candle, and
If
then
he's
2,
one of
and
the
then
great
3, and then 4.
poskim, then why do we just?
He wasn't one of the
Oh, no?
Not at all.
Oh.
No, this was just the guy.
Oh, okay.
Just the guy with a strange custom. But
But we learn.
but there is something to be learned out of Beit Shammai's opinion. I'm not saying that it's not that they're wrong. The Talmud discusses what's the rationale, and we'll learn it perhaps another time.
We learned that with Rav Yisrael Cohen
Perfect.
yesterday,
Great.
and it was it's more appropriate when Mashiach comes and the
There is that
potential and what
idea.
it could be.
Interesting.
So then,
Interesting.
would that not mean that he was one of the great poskim? He even
Beit
greater.
Shammai
we're just
was,
not-
of course. I'm
we're
not
just
saying he's
on-
not, but the law got decided. There's always lots of ideas and lots of opinions, but in the end of the day, many times the law gets, permanently anchored, and until Mashiach comes, then, all bets are off, as they
I
say.
love the idea of just doing all variations of the mitzvah. 2
I like it
menorahs.
too. You
What
can
else?
if you want, but
Just have.
don't
6
say a
different-
bracha on it. Okay?
Just have
say the
6
bracha on the
different
one.
sukkahs.
That's right. Right. The Gra, we talked about it when we talked about tefillin a couple weeks ago. With that, there's 2 versions, Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, and Shulchan Aruch says you should put on both versions. And the Gra would not put on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and they asked him why. What the Shulchan Aruch says you should. The Gra, Eliyahu of Vilna, one of the greatest geniuses of the 19th century, and he said, well, if I'm going to try to cover all the opinions, I'd have to put on, I think he said, something like 64 pairs of tefillin.
Right.
Because if every little variation, if you need to, each one is not kosher according to the other one. So you have to, this is just impractical. So I say there's one tradition. We're going to follow Rashi. That's the major tradition, and not go crazy about trying to fulfill all the different opinions. So it's a danger when I like the idea. Let's do everything possible, but there's so much possible that you may never, have time to eat.
The Sephardic tradition with the tefillin is until once you're married, then you start wearing both, but not at the same time. There's a part in the tefillah, and then you get to there and you switch it up.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's what they do.
Interesting. Anyways, Mahadrin means that we increase the candles. That's what he was quoting here. Adding a candle each night, and he says this symbolizes that the spirit continues to exist and thrive despite hardships and surrounding darkness. The Torah is eternal and constantly increases. I think I mentioned yesterday also that it's one of the reasons the Talmud says we say Hallel every single day of Chanukah. Each day we're celebrating an enhancement of the miracle that it increased. The miracle increased because the oil, lit for one more day. Okay, Moshe, we stopped you in the middle. Page 233, second paragraph. We can have Noam read for us the second paragraph.
It is well known that the number 8 alludes to the metaphysical, the supernatural. The world was created in 7 days, and there are 7 days in a week, so the number 8 indicates that which lies beyond nature. For example, the purpose of Brit Milah is to rectify and elevate nature to a higher level, and therefore it is performed on the 8th day from birth. The Torah as well belongs to the 8th level, as it serves to elevate nature to a divine level. This is why the Torah was given after the 7-week Omer period, which represents the wholeness of nature. After the 7 weeks of the Omer, we rise to a level above nature, the festival of Shavuot. When the Torah was given, similarly, we complete the annual Torah reading cycle on Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day from the beginning of Sukkot, which is also called Simchat Torah in Israel. In Israel? Simchat Torah. Is that just...
It's the same day as Shmini Atzeret. In Chutz La'aretz, it's 2 separate days.
Yeah. Chanukah, too, belongs to the realm of the supernatural, as it reveals the lofty stature of the Oral Torah. Therefore, we light candles for 8 nights, adding a new candle each night.
Beautiful idea. Why there's 8? We talked about it yesterday. Maybe someone asked why there are 8 days to Hanukkah, and here he gives a nice because it symbolizes the number, symbolizes the supernatural, something beyond the natural world. Of course, God and Torah. It works well with the number 8. For another meaning of the number 8, I'll see you in a week. We'll talk about it next week on Hanukkah. I have a shir I'm hoping to give to you. But there's more down in the footnote number 7. Who wants to read for us now? Footnote number 7.
Number 7.
Yeshua.
Oh.
Go for it. Maharal's Tiferet Israel and Ner Mitzvah, page 23.
Right.
We spoke about the Maharal. We have a translation into English of this book on Hanukkah by the Maharal. I haven't seen it recently. Someone wants to search this bookcase for a small little, almost looks like a booklet, a small little booklet. It looks like this, but this is also a book by the Maharal translated into English, but this is one about Pesach. The one about Hanukkah is looks like this, but this is not. So it's here somewhere. Anyways, go ahead, Yeshua.
See Maharal's Tiferet Yisrael, chapter 225, and Ner Mitzvah, page 23. The Greeks' worldview stemmed from nature, and since there are different forces in nature, they believed in multiple gods. In addition, since nature has no values, only strength, beauty, and external wisdom, they yearned for these things. In contrast, Judaism is based on the belief in one God, who created nature, but who himself transcends it. The goal is to discover God's oneness in the world, to reveal the image of God within man and through morals, the Torah, and the Mitzvot. The Greeks cannot coexist with us because our belief in one God and our ethical values undermine the foundation of their worldview. Judaism, however, can coexist with Greek culture and use it as a tool for research, classification, and the revelation of Jewish concepts. For more on this notion, see Bina Le'itim, 125 through 27.
Thank you. So we touched upon this the other day. Hirsch was asking, or sort of saying something about Greek thought and Greek culture versus Jewish culture. And at the time, we weren't really talking about it. And he said it's complicated. Here, this footnote seems to touch on that as well. And he says, if at the top of the pyramid is your own man's beauty, man's power, man's wisdom, and nature, so then, there's no room for God, and so Judaism is incompatible with such a worldview. But if you have at the top of the pyramid God, the one God, then there's room to incorporate, of course, following God's Torah and Mitzvot and the worldview, you can incorporate all those other things as part of your divine worship, and you can even take some of the...
So it's not a two-way street. It
That's
only
right.
works for Jews, not for Greeks.
You can take some even of the developments of the Greek culture, because they did develop science, they did develop aesthetics, they did develop
Philosophy.
the
Beautiful
different
temples.
elements of he
Sports,
says here
the Olympics.
classification,
Spartans.
all sorts of systems, which we can now use them in the greater worldview, incorporate them into our Judaism. So that's what we said the other day. Yafte Elokim liyafet v'yishkon be'olei Shem. God gives beauty to Yafet, the Greek, the father of Greece, in the Torah mentioned, from the sons of Noah. We spoke about it the other day. V'yishkon be'olei Shem, and he can dwell within the tents of Shem. Shem being the forerunner of the Jewish people, the Semites. That's where it came from. So it's just a little bit in the footnote. This is a work of halacha, but he does spend the time to say there's a special significance to the number 8 and to the fact that we add a candle on every day. It teaches us a lot about the values that we're propounding on Hanukkah. Okay, so far so good. Yesterday we already looked at the Al Hanisim, and when we recite it, and now Hallel, we also talked about that a little bit. Let's move on to festive meals. We also spoke about. What we're going to do now is talk about the next. What's today? Today's Thursday.
25th of November.
Today's Thursday. It's Chaf Aleph Kislev.
Okay, almost the 25th.
4 days to go. We have to speak about the lighting of the candles a little more. That's what we're going to do next week. B'ezrat Hashem. Today also is Thursday, which means that it's our last class for today, and so we should say something about the Parsha. Parsha Vayeshev. Unfortunately, I didn't give it out to someone this week. So I'll just say something small with a few remaining moments. Okay. Did you decide to write a letter to your mother now? Or you're taking notes. Okay. Parsha Vayeshev is the first of 4 Parshas, 4 weeks in a row. The longest story told in the book of Genesis. In the book of Bereshit. 4 entire Parshas would speak about the story of Yosef and his brothers.
That's why there's so many movies made about it.
That's why? Okay.
No, I don't think
Maybe it's
I didn't even know there were any movies.
I can name 2 off the top of my head.
it's a good story. No question about it. In any case, it starts in this week. And what I'd like to just do to point out to you is a little background, to put it in context of things we've been learning about when I gave you the charts of the different generations, right? The genealogical charts of 10 generations from Adam to Noah, 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. And then I showed you, the Torah lists all the children of Yishmael, last week's Parsha. Then the Torah lists all the children of Esav and the children of Edom. What's going on here with all these lists? So one way to understand and put it into context of what's going on here, why the Torah all of a sudden dwells so much on Yosef and his brothers, is something we mentioned before, but this really helps to bring it into focus. You might have heard of the orange peel theory.
Which theory? The theory that they're edible, the theory that there are bugs in
Orange
them?
peel theory of the history of the world.
I don't know.
Promoted by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in his book The Kuzari. He doesn't talk about oranges particularly, he just talks about fruit and the peels. And he says if you look throughout the way the Torah describes in Bereshit the history of the world and the Jewish people, it describes that there's the fruit, the good part, and then there's always something that gets discarded, something that gets peeled off and shunted aside. The Torah doesn't talk about them anymore. And he says, starting off with Adam, all of humanity, all of civilization, there's a lot of husk there because they all get destroyed except for one family, Noah and his family. So that's this process of choosing the good from the bad.
And then
Which you're not allowed to do on Shabbat.
Good, one at a time. Of course, not on Shabbat. You choose. So Noah was chosen. The rest of civilization then was destroyed. And then Noah, we go through the generations. There's some problems with you might have heard of the generation of the dispersion, right? The Tower of Babel. Before Dor HaPalaga, or the generation of the dispersion. Essentially, God says, "I can't deal with everybody. There's no hope to get everybody living the moral life, the perfect vision that I have for humanity. I'm going to focus and choose only one person. Abraham gets chosen, and from Abraham, I'm going to create a great nation." And this is also a little bit of like the peel getting thrown out and choosing the fruit. And then Abraham had 2 children, as we know, Ishmael first and Yitzchak. Ishmael gives him some gifts, sends him away. The rest of the Torah is not the story of Ishmael, it's the story of Yitzchak. and how he develops. So again, we have this peeling off of the husks and
Esav too.
developing the fruit. Next step, Yitzchak, also two sons, Yaakov and Esav. Esav goes off to Edom, do your own thing. First, it wasn't so easy, but he tried to kill his brother. But ultimately, the rest of the story goes on with Yaakov. Yaakov gets the blessing of Abraham, Yitzchak to Yaakov, and he becomes the third of the four fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Four. There was actually only three fathers, right? But the truth is, then the question is, what happens to the pattern? The brothers maybe thought that the pattern is going to continue. And they were fighting over who's going to be the husk that gets thrown out and who gets to be the one who continues the line. If this is the theory, we've shown it throughout the entire history of the world, that God is choosing the good from the bad. So they didn't want to be the ones that got thrown out. And they got a feeling that somehow maybe Yosef was going to be the one chosen. And so they said, let's get rid of him so that we stay within the fold. We want to be Jewish. We want to be the Jewish people. And to make a long story short, and we're going to keep talking about this story for the next 3 weeks, ultimately the answer is these are the 12 children of Yaakov. For the first time, all 12 tribes compose the Jewish people. Nobody gets rejected. Nobody gets thrown out.
We've filtered enough.
Enough filtering. Now we've reached the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're going to build the people of Israel, ultimately coming out of Egypt. And all 12, we need all 12. Yosef can't reject the brothers can't reject Yosef. We need to live with each other as much as we hate each other's guts. The brothers had a lot of hatred there, but they learned, they had to learn the hard way, maybe. It was definitely quite a trip. We're gonna learn about it in the next 3 weeks. But putting that in the context of the entire book of Bereshit, maybe that's why we have a 4-week series, because this is a new concept for us to recognize and to deal with, is that no, we're not going to reject anybody. No Jew shall be left behind. No one of the tribes gets rejected, but we're all the 12 tribes somehow, even though they're different and they have different, perhaps styles and ideas which they promote more than others. We need them all, and together we create the Jewish people. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Hanukkah Mitzvah.